Welcome to the Forge, my wanton wildlings. I'm your creepsmith, and I hope you like my work.
Hi, wildlings. If you fear something and want your loved ones and community to be safe from it, one way to make sure that they do is to pen a cautionary tale about it. This has the added advantage of working on a cultural scale, provided that the tale catches on. On the other hand, it also has a disadvantage built right in. There's always gonna be that one smartass that says, "Hold my beer." Tonight's story, If You See This Man on the Side of the Road, Don't Drive Home, by Reddit user Rick the Intern. We have this urban legend in my city called the Wrong Way Man. Supposedly, you might see him standing on the side of the road when you're driving. Some say it's always when you're on your way home. Now, I've seen pictures of this Wrong Way Man. They circulate among us by text message. They circulate around, posted by students, workers, friends, passing it back and forth, and among family around here. Oddly, I've never seen any of those pictures posted online. I'm not sure if it's because of fear, because those who have taken the pictures want to perpetuate the mystique of our local urban legend, or because of something else. Now, I was pretty sure that those pictures had been a hoax, just someone dressed up as the Wrong Way Man. Maybe it was the same person every time. As far as what the Wrong Way Man looks like, he wears his tattered clothing backwards. Usually it's a flannel shirt and jeans. His painted, smiling face looks eerily realistic until he turns to the side and you can see that it's in fact a smooth surface. It seems that he shaves his hair off, paints a face over the back of his head, and puts on a shoulder-length wig that covers up his real face. Those who I've met who claim to have spotted the Wrong Way Man say that they waited a week before driving home, staying over at a friend's house or a hotel, not even bothering to go home to pack up a suitcase. I've also heard, though, that you need to wait a month. The common consensus seems to be, if you see him while driving home, don't finish the drive home. Turn around, go somewhere else, and then wait for at least a week. I thought it was a bunch of nonsense until my date and I saw the Wrong Way Man when we were going back to my house from the movies. It was Katie who spotted him. "Slow down," she said. "I think I see that Wrong Way Man you told me about." Katie had only lived in my city for half a year, so one of the things that I had told her, on my quest to share with her as many interesting things as I could, had been our local urban legend. Was it a coincidence that we had just been talking about him a few days before? I don't know. I'd never seen someone dressed up as the Wrong Way Man in person. Pictures, sure, but never in person. My foot was actually shaking as I eased up on the gas. It was dark, nearing midnight dark, and there were no street lights. Either that or they were turned off. My car's headlights lit him up. He was on the side of the road, facing us. Actually, he had his back turned to us. His painted face was facing us. The jeans and the flannel shirt and the wig were all turned front to us as well. His arms and legs looked wrong. They were shoved down his clothing the opposite way. I wanted to be amused, but I was really alarmed. When we drove to about 10 feet away in my car, he turned his painted head toward us. Those artificial eyes, realistic but forever held too wide, seemed to be staring right into mine. And as we drove slowly by, I waved to him and tried to ease some of the tension. He didn't wave back. I looked at Katie. She was waving too, but she wasn't laughing. I glanced back in time to see the slick side of that person's shaved, painted head, and the optical illusion of a real face being there was shattered. Shattered, but somehow remained the worse for it. Also, when I peered into the rear view mirror as we increased our distance, I thought I saw something glinting beneath the shoulder-length wig that he wore. Then he was gone, lost to the darkness. I picked up speed. He hadn't been walking toward us, but somehow I was worried that he would come after us, quickly. "So what do we do now?" Katie said. "We can't go to your home, or mine." I glanced at her, and soon we both started laughing. "Well," I said, "after tonight, we'll be able to tell everyone that we saw the wrong way man and went immediately home." "I wonder who that was, pretending to be him," Katie said. "I wonder why they were doing it. You think we should turn around and try and talk to them?" "I'd rather we didn't," I said. "They could be dangerous." "But I'm sure it was just someone looking to keep the legend alive." "That's your car," Katie said. "But if it was mine..." "All right," I said, "we'll turn back around. My grandpa used to say, if you're in doubt which turn to make, you can always make a U-turn until you figure things out." He used that as a metaphor for life. But as I did my U-turn, my heart was thrashing in my chest. We drove down the entirety of that dark street without seeing that person again. It was a couple of miles long in that direction, so there's no way they could have walked or run the distance so quickly. Katie and I decided that the person must have left the shoulder of the road for the surrounding woods. The idea of them hiding in the woods as we drove by again made me feel like I had spiders crawling on my flesh. We did another U-turn, and during that whole time, I kept glancing around in case that person jumped at us from out of nowhere. But soon, we were heading back in the direction of my house with no second look at the wrong way man. Katie and I tried to laugh it out, tried talking about other things, but both of us were actually still pretty scared. We couldn't stop chatting about everything and nothing, or glancing out the windows or into our side mirrors. And then we turned into my subdivision, onto my street. And everything changed. As soon as we turned onto the street, we started to go backwards instead of forwards. "Did you put it in reverse?" Katie said. Her hand was gripping my arm. It was as cold as ice. So I stopped the car. Both of us were looking at the indicator. The car was still in drive. I took my foot off the brake and put it onto the gas pedal again. The houses, familiar houses I saw every day when coming home, were moving away from us. "Maybe something's wrong with my car," I said. But when I tried driving forward again, I looked to the side and then in the rearview mirror. We weren't moving, not according to those views. In front of us, the houses receded every time I put my foot on the gas, but from the side, out the side window, and rear, it appeared that we were standing still. See, on my street, everything is well lit. There are tons of streetlights, so we couldn't argue it away as if it had anything to do with darkness or limited visibility. "Let's get out of here," Katie said, her voice almost at a whisper. "Yeah," I said in a similar way. "But how are we gonna leave?" "Put it in reverse?" Well, when I put my car in reverse and tried that, we actually moved forward. But again, to the sides and rear, we seemed not to have moved, like we were caught just past the entrance to my neighborhood. It was when Katie and I stopped the car and were debating getting out that we spotted someone coming toward us on the sidewalk. They were approaching us from the front of the vehicle, so I'm not sure exactly how accurate our perception of the distance was, it seemed like they were already about 20 feet away. I don't know why it took me so long to realize this. Maybe it was because I didn't want to, but I recognized my neighbor by the back of his head and by his body shape, which was somewhat atypical. I had seen him often stooped working in his garden while I was driving by. He was walking backwards toward us. When he got closer, he stopped. Then he started shouting, "Implet! Implet!" over and over again, standing stock still. His back was to us, of course. Only later would I realize that he had been saying, "Help me," in reverse. I rolled down my window. "Mr. Nelson," I said, "what's the matter?" He stopped shouting. Now that my window was down, I could hear his body creak and snap. Blood poured out of fissures as the joints of his arms and legs changed drastically. When Mr. Nelson's head twisted all the way around toward us, I was sure that I saw the light go out in his eyes. Then whatever had taken over Mr. Nelson made a first step forward with the new architecture of his body. And Katie and I both began to scream at that first step. I rolled up the window as Mr. Nelson loped around on strange, inhuman legs. His kneecaps and elbows had become stretched and exaggerated from being reversed. I put my foot on the gas with the car still in reverse, and through the front windows we seemed to be careening forward. Even though a glance out the sides or the rear view showed us to still be stationary, we slammed into Mr. Nelson. Blood slashed across the windshield. The car rose and fell as we went over his body. To the sides and rear, there was no indication of the car rising or falling. I didn't see a lump appear on the road behind us, but I kept my foot on that gas, still going forward in reverse. I saw a window of a neighbor's house shatter. A couple that I barely recognized crawled out like baby spiders out of eggs, leaking blood and more blood as they scraped themselves over the shards in the window frame. I don't think it was that they didn't know how to open the windows. When the wife paused halfway through the window, she smiled. She intentionally rubbed her scalp against a particularly sharp-looking piece of glass. Meat and blood came away, and I think I could see the white of her skull. By then, her husband was already on the ground, sprinting toward us. And again, I sped forward. They and their house vanished in the sides and rear of the vehicle, which were, again, still apparently stuck near the street's entrance. None of it made sense. More people were coming out of their homes. They came out all twisted and broken, damaging themselves further as they exited. They ran toward us on backward legs, churning their backward arms. Everything about them was the wrong way. Before long, I found myself slamming on the brakes. "Keep going!" Katie yelled. "They're going to catch up with us!" Ahead, I saw my own driveway. Someone that looked like me was talking to another person with a painted face. The painted face nodded up and down. It nodded like a real, actual face would do. Then, when I saw the wig shuffle and move seemingly on its own, I realized that the true face under that wig was doing the talking. Moving its lips, breathing. The wrong way man was talking to me, or someone who looked like me. At the same time, Katie was reaching over to me, trying desperately to put her foot on the gas. A couple of twisted pieces of bone and meat collided with the windshield. Two faces with bunched up folds of neck leered at me out of glazed eyes. These were faces that I should have recognized. Their twisted arms continued to beat at the window, even though their eyes told me no one was home. A spider's web of cracks spread up and across the windshield, its grooves caught with blood. I slammed my foot on the gas while helping to steady Katie back into her seat. We flung those two off, and right after, we ran over an entire family in quick succession. I didn't have time to feel guilty. These were not my neighbors. These were not my neighbors. These were not... Katie and I both began to change. I heard some of my bones break and felt it a moment later, like the reverse of lightning before thunder. Katie and I started screaming, almost in unison and just about in the same tune. It was like a choir of pain and fear and pain had risen up with us as instruments. "Keep your head back," I yelled as I strove to keep my head pinned against my seat. "Don't let it twist around. No matter what happens to the rest of our bodies, we can't let it kill us." "I know," Katie said. "Just get this car out of here. Make a U-turn or something." Make a U-turn, I thought. What was it that my grandpa said about life and how if you didn't know what to do, you could always make a U-turn? Still in reverse, yet still going forward, I wheeled the car, screeching around. I didn't glance out the sides or rear. I gunned it, heading back towards where we had come from. And the wrong way man waited. He waited for me at the juncture of my driveway and the street. His painted mouth grinned forever. His painted eyes were too wide to be capable of blinking. We passed him and drove out of the neighborhood. Katie and I weren't. We passed him and drove out of that neighborhood. We weren't out of the woods, though. I was able to get us to a nearby gas station before my legs and arms, which were partway reversed and leaking blood, completely gave out. We crawled out of the vehicle and onto the cold, hard concrete of the parking lot. I blacked out almost at once, but Katie tells me that she retained consciousness until the ambulance arrived. I don't envy her. We spent months in that hospital with broken bones and torn ligaments and shredded muscles. I think the only thing that had saved us from permanent damage might have been the seats of our vehicle resisting our changes. We told the doctors that we'd been in a car accident. They just shook their heads at us and kept asking questions. I did go back home eventually. We both did. The reason I went home was because one of my neighbors that we had run over with my car came to the hospital to visit me. They seemed completely fine, as if nothing had happened and the wrong way man had never changed them. But the damage was done. To my vehicle, to Katie, to me, both physically and psychologically, and while our bodies were on the mend, I don't think we'll ever be the same. I feel the wrong way inside. Every story's got a grain of truth. Ain't that the old saying? It'll feel a bit different, I imagine, if that grain comes to life and tries to murder you. Stay scary, my wildlings. Don't hold the beer, and make the most of your nights.